and somewhere along in the pregnancy, we discovered that there was some problems. And so we went and got tested and found out he had this thing called Hydrops Fetalis, and he had a 4% chance to live. And so we talked about it, and we had him chromosomally checked to make sure he was okay that way, which he was. And so then we decided to go ahead and have him. No matter what else was wrong with him, we were going to have Garrett. And so before he was born, we went several trips back and forth to Wichita, and Kim, they withdrew fluid out of Garrett's stomach through Kim's stomach to try to let his lungs develop. And then we did that probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 times before he was born.
They didn't give him much of a chance. They said 4%.
4%. And so, right, the last checkup that we had with him, they said he was in distress, so they were going to take him early. So she had to have a C-section, and they took him 2 months early. He was 3 pounds, some odd ounces, like 3 pounds, 6 ounces or something like that. And he was in a NBICU at Wichita for 6 weeks, and we stayed in the Ronald McDonald House. And I remember going there. We could see him twice a day, and he was in this little incubator thing. And I remember it was the first time in my life that I could never work my way through something. You know, I always believed in hard work, and I thought that I could do something. And I remember sitting there every day, twice a day, and the only thing I could do besides pray is I was trying to will him to live. I remember doing that every day, and that's all I could do. And after we got out of Wichita, they transferred him back to Garden, and I think he was in Garden for a couple of weeks, and then we brought him home, and he was hooked up to all these machines. He was in our bedroom, and I remember every morning, like if he was low on oxygen or quit breathing, an alarm was supposed to go off. But every morning I'd wake up, and the first thing I do is to check and see if he was alive still, you know. And we lived that way for several months in our house. And
so
then
it was a traumatic start.
But it was just life, you know. Me personally, I didn't give it that much thought. And then later on, after he was a couple years old, and we thought, you know, for pretty sure he was going to live, it happened to Kim first. To make a long story short, she got depressed, and so she got medication, and she got better. And myself, I got depressed too. I guess it was some sort of PTSD, I believe. And so for me, I was supposed to be big and strong, and I got so bad I couldn't even count to 20. We do flood irrigation. I was supposed to count the rows that were done, go to the other end and change the water, and I couldn't do it. And so I realized that I needed help. And so I went and got some medication, and I felt better. And what I learned from that is the biggest mistake, in my opinion, that I made was waiting 4 years. I should have gone in for help immediately. And I'll tie that in with when Garrett died and something that Tom taught me. But I learned that I couldn't do it by myself and that I needed help. And Tom told me later on in one of our sessions, he said, Garrett taught you to get help. And I didn't understand what he was saying, and I'll tie that in with Garrett's death after Kim tells about his life.
So Garrett had a rocky entrance, no doubt. You know, he had several months there to get caught up with.
As did his parents.
Exactly. We didn't realize it at the time, but that was a whole trauma experience in itself.
And you had 2 other kids.
Yes, a 5 and a 7-year-old.
We took our 2 other children with us every time.
Yeah.
They were with us on every doctor's visit, every time before Garrett was born. They were in Ronald McDonald House with us.
They stayed there with us the whole time. We didn't have a whole lot of family here, so it was just the 4 of us back and forth a lot. So, but anyway, the moral of that story is that Garrett did live. And, you know, the 4% chance was, you know, a gift. I mean, with 4% chance, I mean, he had a tattoo that said 4%. So it was a pretty big deal with him growing up that he did. He was a miracle. In everybody, he was a happy kid. He grew to be a happy child. He could do things. He had some physical limitations at birth and beyond, but he was the baby of the family. He was well loved. He was a darling little tow-headed kid, fun to be with. Wherever he was, we would say about Garrett growing up, wherever he was, that's where he wanted to be. And so he was really happy in the moment. And he taught us a lot about just being in the moment. Yeah. He was kind. And we had a good and normal life. You know, life was good. We liked our life. We had 3 healthy, happy kids. You know, Garrett lived, and so life was good. We did not realize that Garrett had a problem with alcohol until he became like later years in high school and then into college. And then we realized by college, we were hoping he would be able to graduate before we had to do something, but it became very clear that he needed an intervention. Alcoholism runs in our family, and addiction. And so, you know, Garrett drew the short stick on that deal. And so we did do an intervention, and Garrett went to treatment when he was in college. He spent 37 days and at rehab, and then he lived for 9 months in a sober living environment in Colorado. So he had sobriety. You know, he had sobriety. He had 14 months of sobriety. And then he moved back, and he looked good. He looked good on the outside. He was clean and sober. And so he wanted to move back to Wichita to finish his degree. He had about a semester left to go to get his criminal justice degree. And so he did. He moved back to Wichita. And you know, we wanted him to be happy. He was clean and sober. Looking back, we know now that, you know, our God gave us a beautiful year that year. He gave us a whole year of good memories with Garrett when he was clean and sober. Everybody was in a good place. We did a lot of fun things that year before he died. We took a few trips. You know, everybody was happy, healthy. We had 2 beautiful grandchildren. My oldest son got married that year. Garrett gave a phenomenal, off-the-charts best man toast at my oldest son's wedding. And life was good. Then Garrett relapsed. You know, after 14 months, he relapsed. And quickly got back on the train again and went to a 6-week outpatient rehab, but he relapsed again. And so from the time he relapsed to the time he actually died was less than 6 months. It was a quick descent into his addiction and alcoholism. And so Kirk's going to tell about his death and how that went. But we're just the normal family that unfortunately 2 of our children were alcoholics. And we view that as alcoholism and addiction as a disease, like any other disease that people get that don't want their disease. And so we did that as such. And we're very grateful for the time we spent in Al-Anon and AA. And we're firm believers of life prepares us for life. So we had a lot of tools when Garrett was going into rehab and when he was getting help and getting treatment. And we're grateful for that. And so I think Kirk's going to tell about how Garrett died.
Yeah, we had planned this family vacation for over a year. It was planned around Garrett. You know, he was clean and sober at the time. Everything was good. We had this grand vacation planned. It was for 17 days. Well, he started drinking again, and he couldn't, you know, I was mad because it was a bad time of year for me. I didn't want to go then. So the whole thing was planned around Garrett, and he started drinking again. And he's the one that basically made the rule in our family that when our other son was drinking, you know, no one wanted to be around him. So we quit taking him on family vacations. And then Garrett started drinking, and he knew he couldn't go with us. And what did he tell you right before we left?
I remember the last time I gave him a hug, and it was in his living room. We'd gone to a Toby Mac concert, and we'd gone to my granddaughter's appointment, came back through, and I gave him a hug. And I said, Garrett, I'm afraid to leave. I'm afraid to leave you. I feel like something bad's going to happen. I wish you could go. And he gave me a hug with tears in his eyes, and he said, I wish I could go too. And he meant that. He knew he could not go, not because we weren't allow him to go, because he just knew that he was incapable of going in the condition he was in. And so, yeah, he said, I wish I could go too.
And we left. And we had another son that was clean and sober.
The whole family was going, everybody was going. So we went.
We went for 17 days, and we had a great time. The grandchildren were there. Our son-in-law, our daughter-in-law, everything was great. We had a really good time. We were going home. We were driving home from Florida, and we talked about it, and
Garrett had said he would go back to rehab when we were done.
Kind of spur of the moment, we thought, well, maybe we'll just go through Wichita and say hi to Garrett and see if we can get him to go to treatment. So we drove. We ended up, where did we end up?
Paducah, Kentucky.
So you want to tell him about that?
Yeah, it was the night before. Garrett, we had lots of contact with Garrett the whole time we were gone, trying to convince him to go back to treatment. And he had agreed to go back to treatment when we came back. He said, well, I'll go when you guys get back from your trip. And so on the way back through, we thought, well, why wait? Let's just go through and see if we can prompt him to go now. And so we did. And I spoke to him the night before, about 9:00 at night. And he did not expect us to be coming through Wichita. He thought we would go home and then come back for him. So it was a surprise to Garrett that we were going to be coming through the next day. And I talked to him about 9:00 at night, and told him we'd be coming through the next day, and we wanted to talk to him about going back to treatment. And he said, okay. He knew we were coming. He knew we were coming the next day to help him to get back to treatment. And when we hung up, we said, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. And it was good. So.
And then later on that night, right before he killed himself, he talked to his best friend since kindergarten, and they were still in contact, and his friend was married with kids, and they were still best friends. And he talked to him, and then he hung up, and his friend tried to call him back, and he couldn't get a hold of him, and he tried to text him, and he couldn't get a hold of him, so he was worried. So then he called our daughter, and she was worried enough that she called Kim.
And this is the middle of the night.
This is like 1:00 or 12:30 at night.
So she wakes me up in the middle of the night, and she says, Mom, I just need to let you know that Devin called Garrett, and he didn't sound good. And the first thing out of my mouth was, Amy, at some point, I just want Garrett to have peace. And I truly felt that. That was my first sign that I was being divinely held, lovingly held.
What did you say to Amy?
I said, at some point, I just want Garrett to have peace. I didn't think he would kill himself. I just knew that he was in distress, that he was drinking heavily, that he probably wasn't taking the Zoloft any longer. He'd lost his job. He'd lost his girlfriend. He didn't go on the trip with us. He had been left alone for 17 days. He was in a bad place, but it never crossed our minds that he would actually kill himself. We thought he was going to go back to treatment. And so we drove the next day. I mean, there's no way we could have driven from Paducah, Kentucky, all the way to Wichita if we had thought or felt that Garrett had killed himself that night. We could not reach him the next day by phone, but oftentimes when Garrett drank, he would be hungover the next day, and so he wouldn't answer his phone. So that wasn't out of the ordinary. It never entered our minds that there could be a problem until about 20 minutes before we got to his front door. And we looked at each other and we said, what if we can't get in the house? What if he doesn't come to the door? Like a light bulb goes off finally. I don't think we could have made that drive, from Kentucky to Wichita had we known that he had died already. But he had killed himself shortly after midnight. He was already dead by the time Amy had called me that night. And so we did. We drove and we arrived at his house, and we fully expected him to come to the door hungover, and we were going to take him out to dinner and try to convince him to go to rehab.
So we got to the house, and we couldn't get in the front door, and we didn't have a key, and we knocked on all the windows. And I told Tom this before, it was looking back on it, what could you be grateful for out of the situation? I was grateful that we didn't think about that there could be a problem till like 20 minutes before we got there. And this is weird, but I am grateful for this. There's a guy that lived next door to Garrett, and I thought he was like really different. He had block wall all around his house with glass. He had glass embedded in the wall so people couldn't climb over and all this stuff. And I always thought he was really weird, and I couldn't get in the front door, so I'm going down the side of Garrett's house, and of course he probably had cameras or whatever. He saw me going down there, so he opens the side door and he says, what are you doing? And I go, well, I think I have a problem with my son. I'm thinking maybe he killed himself. We can't get in, he won't answer. And he goes, just a minute. And he turns around and he hands me a screwdriver. And to this day, I'm grateful that he handed me a screwdriver, because I knew there was a window in the back. It was like a plant window that sticks out. And with that screwdriver, I pried the piece of glass off. Otherwise I probably was going to break it with a rock or whatever. And I'm grateful that we found him. I'm very grateful for that we're the ones that found Garrett, that we didn't get a phone call from the police, or he didn't.
We would have always wondered, if we weren't the first ones in the house, whether there was a note, whether there was something we missed, what the condition was.
I'm grateful. I couldn't imagine it any other way.
No.
And I went through the window, and I had to do a somersault to get in, and I found him dead on the bed. And before I left the room, for some reason, I had to bend down, and I remember touching the back of his calf with the back of my hand. I had to do that. I don't know why. And obviously I was in shock, because then I went over to his nightstand, and I got his wallet, and I got the gun, and I took him to the car. And
I was on the front porch, and when he came to the door, I knew.
She knew. And
there was absolutely no words necessary. I knew.
And I was in shock, because when the police officer asked me, well, where's the gun? And I go, what's in my car? And he goes, well, why'd you take the gun and the wallet? And I go, I have no idea. I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why I did that. I can't answer that. I don't know why I did it. And so we called our daughter and son. And when I called my daughter, she didn't speak. She just dropped the phone. She never said a word. And they said, do you need us to come up and help you? And I said, no, we don't need you. Well, they came up and did everything.
They were there with them.
I'm glad that they came.
Yeah.
We couldn't have done it without them.
So Garrett died by suicide. At his eulogy, my oldest son gave the eulogy. It was a graveside service, and we had Garrett cremated that weekend. We brought his ashes home with us. It was Memorial Day weekend. That weekend, it was an unbelievable thing that they did for us, so that we didn't have to go home and come back. They came in on Memorial weekend, cremated Garrett. We took his ashes home with us. What my oldest son said was, make no mistake, it was the disease of alcoholism that killed Garrett. He died by suicide, but but it was the disease of alcoholism that killed Garrett. And we know for a fact that Garrett didn't want to die. He just didn't want to live like that. He was in complete misery and despair and had lost all hope. So, we understand that the relationship continues to today. We do. We lost Garrett's physical body. We've spread his ashes many places, and then we moved forward from there. And we
buried half his ashes in the cemetery.
And then we've gone on our healing journey from that point on.
And from after Garrett's death, the next week we were in with it's a relapse prevention counselor that was counseling with our oldest son. He goes, well, she's the only one I know. So we started going there. We started going for counseling, anything that we could do. We went and we said yes to. And I told Tom this one time, and he goes, well, Garrett taught you that. And I go, what? I didn't understand what he was saying. And he goes, well, when Garrett was born and you went through all that, and then you fought it for 4 years, and then you had to go get medication finally. And I'm pretty thick-headed. It took 4 years, and I did. But what I learned from that, after Garrett died, I knew I couldn't or didn't want to do it by myself. And so I said, I went for help immediately. I wanted help. Our world was shattered. Like, we've been through hardships, but this was in a
whole different
class all by itself. I mean, I knew in my soul that I didn't want to or couldn't do it by myself. So I went for help immediately.
So tonight, 4 years ago, was the last time that you had contact with your son, Garrett.
Yes. Yep. Shortly after midnight, he died.
Well, you talked to him today, though.
At 9
yeah.
p.m. I talked to him. Yes. At 9 p.m.
Did you ever in a million years, during those first 6 months, those first 9 months, that first 18 months, did you ever in a million years think that 4 years later, we would be having this conversation in front of the world?
Absolutely not. No, we just wanted to be able to breathe again. I always try to remember who I'm talking to, and I understand your viewers that are listening here tonight are part of the reason that we're still here. We were able to find like-minded people to help us along the way. And we are geographically challenged here in Southwest Kansas, and thank God for the internet, because as you always say, if you can find one other person, the unbearable becomes bearable. And so, no, we just couldn't stay where we were.
Okay, so I am grateful that you shared with us your magnificent son, Garrett's life. I am grateful that you had the courage and the willingness to also share his death with us. And now I want to talk about the road to healing, the road to healing. In my first book, Permission to Mourn, in that first chapter, on page 8, if anyone out there has the book, turn to page 8. There are what I have grown to believe, for me, are what I call life's fundamental questions. And I believe, and I've seen it over and over again with the people that I've worked with one-on-one and the people that I've worked with in groups and on retreat, that we have to ask these questions over and over and over and over and search for answers that will bring us peace. And I am the first to admit, there isn't a right answer and there isn't a wrong answer. There's my answer, there's Kirk's answer, there's Kim's answer. That is the only thing that matters. And by, in a safe, sacred space, sharing where we have come on each of these today, on May 26th, this is where I am. No guarantee that that's going to be where I am on May 27th, because I believe we're here to continually expand. But by sharing what you guys have come to believe, my hope is that we will plant seeds. We will give people something to think about. We will show them that, hey, maybe there is a new way. Maybe there is a new way to look at this. So I have said this a million times, and Maureen, if you are out there, I will say it a million more times. One of the most important questions, if not the most important questions, in my opinion, in my experience, is there a God or a higher power or the force or the all of the all or the universe. I don't care what you call it, but the supreme being. Did you guys come into this with an answer to that question? And throughout your journey since Garrett's death, has that answer changed at all? And what do you think? Is there a God?
Go ahead.
I will probably answer this for myself only. Kirk and I are married, and the mother and father of Garrett. We do different though, in our beliefs somewhat, but we're very similar, very similar. We have talked probably more since Garrett's died than 40 years of marriage. We've talked and talked and talked. So in regard to that question, I always believed in God. I always believed there was a heaven, but it was very, very easy for me to dismiss and say, God's up there somewhere, God, heaven's out there somewhere. Life was good. Didn't really have to question it too deeply. So we'd never had any kind of, death out of order. I will say that very loosely because I believe everybody dies at the right time, no matter when that is. But we hadn't had to really question. Our grief journey began with right away, like Kirk said, being inside of the office of a relapse prevention counselor, because that was the only thing available near here. We went to see a hospice grief counselor for 6 months weekly. He held space for us to cry and cry and cry. We found Tom Zuba around 6 months, and I did my first online grief group at 8 months with him in a closed private Facebook group where we worked through these questions. I met a phenomenal amount of unbelievably supportive people through these groups. I probably did 5 or 6 over the next 2.5 years with Tom. Kirk did several himself also. We did Grief Share 2 times through. That's a 13-week course. That's a faith-based course. We attended 2 grief retreats. And we did many, many other online support groups for parents, bereaved parents. We took a little bit of all those things, but the thing that drove us the most to decide, we could not understand how a child could be here one day and then the next just be gone. It was impossible to understand or fathom. And like Tom says, I would, say, where could he have possibly gone? It was surreal. And so, yes, it forced me to dig deep, to figure out what I did believe. And I've come to believe that, yes, I believe in a omnipotent God. I believe that things are not random. I come back to, as a cornerstone of my healing journey, peace or pain. It comes down to peace or pain for me. When I have thoughts that I could have done something or I should have done something, and it brings me pain, I quickly now return to peace. And, I believe that Garrett died at the right time and in the right way. And it took me a while to get to that point. This was always part of Garrett's story, always part of my story, always part of Kirk's story, because I believe in an omnipotent, divinely led, being lovingly held by our God, my God. And I don't think that there was any way we could have actually even survived without being divinely and lovingly held. It's such a shock when somebody you love dies. And so, yes, my opinion has changed. I believe that, energy, we're made of energy. And when Garrett died, his energy was released to the universe, and it's all around me all the time. And so is heaven all around me all the time.
Don't get ahead of us. Don't get ahead of us.
I believe before I believed God was up there. before I believed heaven was up there. You know, I didn't, when Garrett died, you were right about that. I questioned everything. My whole world shattered. I questioned everything. Today, I believe there is a God. I believe he's all around us. I believe heaven's all around us. I believe Garrett's all around us. And I answered the fundamental questions, what you call the fundamental questions. And I picture those for me as my foundation, my new foundation. My old house is gone. The old me is gone. The new me, I did start with those fundamental questions that you asked, and I answered those. And that's my foundation. This is how I picture it. That's my foundation. And then all the other stuff, the tools, there's other stuff that you have taught us, and that's how I build my house. But my house can be remodeled. You know, I can remodel my house. I can change something tomorrow. And so, but the fundamental questions are the foundation. So they will always, for me, they will always be there, you know, and that's how I picture the fundamental questions. They're my base, my foundation that I built the new me on top of, you know, and tomorrow, you know, my opinions change and that can be changed, but the foundation. So yes, I believe everything changed. I questioned everything, and not everything, but a lot of things changed, and where God is and where from before, yes, that's changed. I believe he's all around us. I don't believe he's up there. I believe he's here right now. I believe he was with Garrett when Garrett died.
So Kirk, if I were to ask you, what is God? What is God? How would you respond?
For me, if I could choose one word, it would be love. God is love. I believe we're all God's children, and I try to equate it to how I feel about my children. But I believe that his love for us is more than I can comprehend, more than I can fathom. And I know the love for my children and my grandchildren, I would give my life for them. I don't know what else I could do, but I would do that. If I could do something else and I knew what it was, I would do that. So I believe he loves us that much, and millions and millions of times more beyond our comprehension. And so that's what he could do. If he is that powerful, which I believe that he is, then he was with Garrett when he died. He was with Garrett before he died.
All things are possible.
All things are possible.
So did you believe that as strongly as you do prior to Garrett's death?
No.
There was no need to delve into.
No. I've analyzed that too for myself. It was more like, I hate to use this word, but I will, maybe insurance, you know. Maybe I was saying there's probably a God in heaven just in case there is, you know, for insurance. I say, yeah, I believe in him, and I go to church, but I didn't delve into it, you know. So that, I think I probably did it for insurance purposes to think I could go to heaven. So, but the God I believe in now is
We had the luxury
different.
of not really having to know.
So as a result, this is really important. As a result of your beloved son taking a gun and killing himself, you have come to the place where you believe that God is love.
Yes, I do.
Mine's a little bit more expanded than that. Mine is like, when I pray, I try to think of what I'm praying about. So, you know, my view has changed over the 4 years, but my God is an all-encompassing love, hope. I have to put hope in there because that's what I pray for. Why would I be praying if I didn't have hope? Love, hope, and just pureness, purity.
So you guys,
And that,
you touched on this a little bit, but I want to shine a light on it. This God that you talk about, where was that God 4 years ago tonight? Where was that God, when the gun went off? Where was that God when you crawled through the window, Kirk?
I believe through counseling with you, it resonates as truth to me that I'm the closest to you of any counselor I've ever been with. And what you say, I can feel your truth. It resonates with me in my body. And so I believe if I was God, I try to picture myself. If I was God and my child was killing himself, it makes sense to me that he would go down there and take Garrett out of his body, his soul, his energy. I call it soul, but it could be energy, whatever you want to call it. He took Garrett in his loving arms and took him away from that. And I believe that with my whole being, because that's what I would do if I was God. And when I went into the room, and I saw it with my mom too, when I went into the room and saw Garrett's body, I told Kim, Garrett's not there. He's not there. It's his body's there, his vessel, whatever you want to call it. But I promise you, Garrett's not there. He's not there. And so I believe God took him before he pulled the trigger. His body was going through the motions, the muscles, whatever, but I believe God was there before Garrett killed himself.
We know Garrett was praying. He was in a bad place, and he was very clear to us that he prayed often to God. He was 100%. He believed in his own God 100%. He was praying to be relieved of his disease while we were praying. And my prayer changed over time because I realized I was powerless to help Garrett. I could not, we were desperate. But we didn't think he would kill himself, but we didn't have the answers either. But at the same time, Garrett was praying to be relieved of his suffering.
On praying, this is my truth. I think I came up with this myself, but that it doesn't make sense. I asked God, and it's from you too. You did all kinds of prayers to save Rory. You did everything in your power that you could. A prayer chain, everything. Well, it doesn't make sense that God would answer everybody's prayers. No one would die. It doesn't make sense that when there's two countries going to war and they're both praying to their God that they're going to win the war. Well, who's going to win the war? I mean, that type of stuff doesn't make sense to me. So maybe people question why God didn't answer their prayers. And I believe for me, that doesn't make sense that no one would die because everyone.
The way we want them answered.
Yeah, so that I believe God answered my prayer, just 100%. I believe it, but I had trouble accepting that to start with. Believing and accepting to me are two different things. I believed it, but the trouble I had was accepting it. But I have come to peace with that, and I accept it. And I believe he was there before Garrett pulled the trigger. That's what I believe.
So I'm pretty sure that you hinted at this, but do you believe that somehow, some way, Garrett still exists?
Absolutely. Absolutely. His energy is all around us always. I wish I would have been keeping track, but there have been so many signs and feelings of connection and nudges and things that I know that his presence is all around us. He, for one, a very simple example, is, and I'll try to make this brief, but when we went back the next day to collect some of Garrett's things from his house, because we were traveling, I picked up one of his candles, his electronic candles, brought it home, set it in my bedroom next to his urn, and just left it there. Weeks and weeks went by, and nothing happened with this candle. And that we were, Kirk was in harvest. This was in July. Garrett died at the end of May. One night I came home very late, and the house was dark, and it had sat there for, over a month. And walked in my bedroom, and the candle was on. And for the next probably year and a half or I don't know how, I mean, I've had to replace batteries, I'm sure, in there somewhere, but it would randomly come on and off all by itself. Days and days would go by, and then the candle would go on. And then, then it would go on every night, different times. So I don't know. I believe that Garrett's energy is out in the universe, and I'm in the universe, and Garrett's with God, and God's all around me, and we're being divinely, lovingly held by my God of hope and love and purity. And so, yes, Garrett's all around us, and I do believe in an afterlife, and I do believe we're connected.
What about you, Kirk? Does Garrett still exist?
And I do too. I've told Tom this lots of times. You're talking to the ultimate skeptic here. I always knew there was something that people, like, I'm a math and science person, so I could never I feel things, but I knew there was people in the world that could make connections that I was not capable of doing. And that's okay. And the sign, like when we went to Helping Parents Heal conference in Arizona, and that's where we first met Tom, and there was things that were happening there that it was way more than coincidence. It was something else going on beyond my comprehension. I even told Kim, and she makes a joke about it now, that she was supposed to keep a list, but I said, you need to start writing this stuff down. We're not going to remember this. It's impossible. This is impossible that all this stuff can happen. So she didn't write it down, so it's her fault that we forgot all
many connections with Garrett. Songs on Alexa that come on randomly.
And for me, when I saw Garrett's body, it wasn't Garrett. So where did Garrett go? It doesn't make sense. That I know he wasn't there. So where is he? Go find him. Like you say, go find him. Well, we found him. It's our truth.
So,
and it brings peace.
Yeah. So you both, I think, have mentioned the word heaven. Where is heaven? And the people that are, in heaven, what's it like in heaven? What's it like to be in heaven, do you think? Where is it, and what's it like to be there?
For me, heaven's all around me, and every good thing that I'm still able to experience in life. When with my grandkids and I hear them laugh, that is heaven on earth to me. When I've had lots of time to think about this. When I can sit quietly and feel close to Garrett, that's heaven on earth. When I can watch Kirk fishing, quietly just sitting, watching him fishing and be peaceful and feel peace inside me, that's heaven. Every good thing, every sunset that I watch, every sunrise that I watch, every bird, I love birds, I love trees. Every time my view or my gaze or my attention is called to something unbelievable, which I know I saw before, but not with the same eyes, that's heaven. And I'm privileged to see that today. And it's all around me all the time, always.
What do you think, Kirk?
For me, heaven is everywhere. Heaven's all around us. People say it's a veil, between our loved ones. I believe there's something to that some people are more connected that way, on that frequency or whatever. I know I'm not. That's okay. I wish I was sometimes, but I let that go. So I believe heaven's all around us, and I believe, like, when you're in heaven, you're aware of everything, you can do anything, and everything's about love. You don't judge people, judge others. It wouldn't be people. You wouldn't judge other souls.
No pain.
It would be light and love, no pain, no judgment,
No suffering.
No suffering.
So I'm going to ask you again. Was this clear prior to Garrett's passing?
Heaven was up there. For me, heaven was up there.
And I remember asking you one time, I'm sure either in a group or during one of our sessions, if Garrett had to die for us to understand ourselves. And if there was no other way, or did Garrett die for us? And then the question comes, is life always happening for us? I don't know that Garrett had to die for us to know how we believe. It's been a gift of this journey. Garrett died. It was part of his story. Part of our story was to be able to recognize some of the gifts that he gave us in the grief journey after his death.
He had to die for me to comprehend it. For me, he had to die because I had no reason to delve into it. I was fat, dumb, and happy before. Life was good. I had no reason to go learn about cancer ahead. It doesn't resonate and make sense to me. I'm not going to go learn about cancer ahead of time in case I get cancer. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to question everything. I'm not going to delve into things. I'm fat, dumb, and lazy and happy. There's no reason to. So for me, Garrett had to die for me to delve into this, to question everything.
So would you say, was that an act of love on your son's part to his father?
I believe that it was. I believe the human side of me has trouble accepting it sometimes, and especially at the beginning, but I believe, for me, it resonates, and I feel it's true for me that yes.
So this is a hard question, particularly to ask parents. Given the opportunity to come back in his physical body, as he was when he was on the planet, would Garrett do that?
Not from where he is now. Not after experiencing what he's experienced now. Garrett was suffering in his body here on earth. Not always, not his entire 26 years, but at the end, he was suffering greatly. And, would we want him back in the same condition? No, he would be suffering. And from where he is now, I know he's at peace. And I'm at peace most days now. Kirk's at peace.
Kirk, what do you think? Would your son come back?
No, he wouldn't come back. Not the way that he was. I think that he did save us in a lot of ways. He saved us. We could have had a 40-year-old man living in the basement, us supporting him on all that. Is that the answer? I don't know. There's a lot of the answers that are beyond my comprehension, because
he felt like he would continue the cycle of relapsing and suffering and suffering.
But if I believe in God and God is love, then
what better place for him really is with the divine.
He wouldn't come back. And this is another thing that kind of relates to that. You asked us before, would you want Garrett back if you could change him, make him not an alcoholic or whatever? I think this is a very important question. And my answer immediately was no then, and it's no today, and I believe it'll be no forever. I would not change the fact that Garrett was an alcoholic. I would not change one single hair on Garrett's head if he came back. I would do the exact same thing again. Because even to change one hair on Garrett's head, then he wouldn't be Garrett. To me, he would be like Garrett or close to Garrett, but he wouldn't be Garrett. He wouldn't be our Garrett, the one that I would give my life for, that I love more than anything. So I would do everything exactly the same. If Garrett came back, I would change nothing, because it wouldn't be my son if anything changed.
So is Garrett still aware of the two of you here on planet Earth? And can he communicate with you, and can you communicate with him?
Well, I know he communicates with me, and I'm assuming he can hear my, or somehow is still connected to me also, because, things that we experience now just didn't happen before he died. There wasn't birds tapping on my window and butterflies landing on my shoulder. I worked on my yards and I never had a butterfly land on my shoulder. I was miserable that day, miserable. Within the first year of Garrett dying. I remember not wanting to be on earth. I was so upset and so sad about my life. And this butterfly just comes around me. I have a weed eater in my hand because that's my relief working outside. This butterfly comes around me, circles around me twice. I look up, I'm crying out there in the middle of the yard by myself. It lands on my shoulder. I look at it and I think to myself, unbelievable. And it's been one thing after another like that. So yes, I do believe he brings me peace in those ways. The oriole outside today, when I'm outside in my space working, birds fly away when you're out filling the bird bath and putting the bird seed in. The oriole comes back and it keeps coming back and it keeps coming back.
For me, all the signs that we have had, that's how Garrett communicates with me. And how I communicate with Garrett is I talk to him almost every day, and I ask him questions, especially at the beginning of my grief journey. I asked myself, Garrett, what would you want from me? What would you want? And then for me, it becomes clear. And am I imagining that? No, I don't think so. I think that Garrett communicates with me. He wants me to be happy. He wants me to find joy again. He doesn't want to take me down, to the dark pit of despair, the bottomless pit of despair. He doesn't, and he communicates that to me, and I believe him. And so when I have difficult questions, especially at the beginning, I'd ask him these questions, and then the answer would be there. There would be no doubt.
One of the big questions was, does he forgive us? Does he forgive? For me, it was, I felt like I had let Garrett down, and I felt a tremendous guilt. And so that was something I had to do over and over and over again, is forgive myself, because I know Garrett's already forgiven me for whatever I did or didn't do.
Have you been able to forgive yourself?
Yes, finally. Once in a while, I get on my, I think about maybe something I should have done, could have done, but then it brings immense pain. And I know Garrett is okay today. I know Garrett is okay. From where he is, he's okay. And so am I. And so is Kirk. And so is our family. We miss Garrett with every breath we take. We wish he was here every minute. His name has been spoken probably more since he died than when he was alive. It comes up in conversation every day. And we're grateful for that. And we're grateful for that 26 years. It was a good 26 years.
So if people that don't know me, sometimes I'm looking off to the side and I write things down. So, Kim, you said, I believe everyone dies at the right time in the right way. I promise you, and I respect this, that there are people watching us live right now, and there are people that will watch the recording that will be horrified by that. Do you remember when that first thought was introduced to you? Do you remember your response?
Yes, I do. And it was prior to ever meeting you or reading your book. That was reinforcement for me. But we had a trip planned to our favorite place, Sanibel, a place we had traveled to often with Garrett, a place some of his ashes are actually spread today. But my sister-in-law had gone to Sanibel shortly after Garrett died, within a few months, and had an experience there. And we knew nothing about mediums. We knew nothing about the afterlife. We knew nothing about connections or signs or, energy or any of this. We were in deep, deep pain. She traveled there with her husband, had a great trip. In the course of her time there, she had coincidental interaction with a lady that she met on the beach. And they struck up a conversation to a random person, random. I say random very, very loosely. And in that course of that conversation, she said, yeah, you know, we're here. And somehow it got brought up. My nephew just recently died. You know, we're here, we're healing. And the lady grabbed her arm. This is the lady she'd never seen before. Grabbed her arm and she said, I have to tell you 3 things. And she said, I have to tell you that this was always part of his story, that he was deeply loved and that it was nobody's fault. Those 3 things. So my sister-in-law was, you know, a little bit, and she didn't know what to make of this. She didn't see the lady again, ever again, that whole trip. She comes home, she's thinking about this has been a phenomenal experience for her. And she doesn't know whether she should or should not, or how she should relay this information to us. We're newly bereaved. Our son just died by suicide, and she just had this experience in Sanibel with someone who stopped her randomly and told her these 3 things. She finally decides to go ahead, and the best thing she could do is just to relay it the way it was told to her, without her opinion about it, without her take on it, without her feelings on it, just the way she was the messenger. She was the messenger, and I'm grateful. I'll never know. I think the reason why it wasn't given to me directly is I couldn't hear it at the time. Diane was able to hear it at the time. She was able to relay the message back to me as said to her. And that was the first I ever heard that it's nobody's fault. This was always part of his story. And he knew he was deeply loved. She said, I see a man with long hair walking down the beach with earbuds in his ears. Diane never knew that Garrett grew his hair out. She never saw Garrett with long hair. He grew it out in treatment, and he died before she'd ever seen that. He cut his hair before he died. And we had a funny thing within our family. Garrett would always steal our earbuds. Everybody, he never had earbuds wherever we go. Mom, can I borrow your earbuds? And they'd go home with them. Dad, can I borrow your earbuds? I forgot my earbuds at home. Can I borrow your earbuds? So when she said to him, and she said, you know, did Garrett ever have long hair? Because she said she sees this man walking down the beach with long hair and earbuds in his hair. That was the first I ever thought that this was always part of his story. That was the door that cracked open for me. And that was before I met you.
There's a little more to the story too. When Diane was debating on whether to tell us or not, she asked God, she prayed to God and said, can I have a sign whether I should tell him or not? Well, that morning, my brother, if you think I'm a pessimist, he's the most pessimistic person I know. He wrote a note to her and left it on the counter before he left for work. And he said, that lady is real. I looked into her eyes and she is real, and you should tell them. And Diane gets out of the shower and he's gone, and she reads the note and she came over and told us.
And this was within 2 months of Garrett dying.
So seeds were planted.
Yes.
For me, I believe, if I believe the stuff that I just said, which I do about my loving God, then Garrett did die at the right time. Was it my right time, me as a human? No. Was it my plan? No. But do I believe it? Yes. The trouble, like I said before, the trouble I had was accepting it as a human, to accept that. That's the part I worked on my healing journey, accepting that.
Because we believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God, he didn't say, oops, when Garrett killed himself. I didn't see that coming.
It doesn't make sense.
He knew Garrett would die. He knew when he would die. And he knows when I will die. My God knows when I will die, and when Kirk will die. And it was always part of his story.
So you have given us an incredible amount to take in.
We're grateful.
And I want folks to know that Kim and Kirk have said that they would be willing to answer a couple of questions. So if anything that they said brought up a question for you, feel free to type it in, and I would be happy to be your voice and ask them. So what would you, if you had one, I hate to use the word advice, but if you had one message, if you each had one message for folks, you know, who may be brand new, who may be 4 years, who may be 8 years, what would your message be?
For me, that there is hope, that you don't have to feel pain for the rest of your life, that it's possible, because I do it every single day, feel both sadness over missing my son. I would go back in a heartbeat of not knowing anything I know in the last 4 years to have Garrett back on earth with me. I was very happy before, and I didn't know what my God was. I didn't know where heaven was. I didn't know anything about, how I believed. But that's not possible. And I struggle against what is, it brings me pain. So I would say, if your inclination is to get any kind of help, get it early, and that you don't have to be tied to pain for the rest of your life, that it is possible to have joy, new joys, right along sadness at the same time.
For me, I would tell people my piece of advice would be to get help as soon as possible and try to find like-minded people. Don't try to do it by yourself. For me, it helps to have other people. What I believe is we connect on a soul level, like soldiers in war, alcoholics, Al-Anon people, families of alcoholics. There's a connection there.
Traumatic events.
Yeah, the people that have lost loved ones, a traumatic loss. For me, I automatically have what I call a soul connection with those people. My brother doesn't get it. I'm very close to him. My dad, other people don't get it because of my family, because it's nothing against them. I wouldn't know what it's like to be an electrician because I've never been an electrician. So they can't get it, but I connect with people.
And thank God, they have empathy and they've been supportive. But this is an experience like other experience that you have to actually experience to understand. And I don't want them to understand. I don't want them to. That would be immense amount of pain.
So here's a question from Rhonda. She said, how did Garrett's death change your marriage in the beginning?
I'll let Kirk answer that one. It hasn't been easy. It's gotten easier.
That's like asking a woman her weight, but we had trouble. It caused problems. We were
looking to each other for help.
Yeah, and I remember telling Kim specifically, I can't save you. I told her that I can't save you, and I knew she couldn't save me. So yes, it caused a lot of problems.
Lots of friction.
We had a long road, and we've been through a lot together that we drew upon heavily, but it tested. I don't think we didn't get close to divorce, but because we had such a long road. I believe that this is my truth. If we were newly married or something like that, I think it would have, been the test of the marriage might have even been more. But yeah, it was a huge strain and test on our marriage.
I think when two people are in that much pain and you're looking toward each other to do something, fix it, help me. And,
they're
incapable. And they're also your safe haven. If you scream and yell at them or just behave horribly, they're still going to love you. So you dump yours on them and they dump theirs on you. And it just adds more pain on more pain on more pain. We are unbelievably thankful for the people we found online so that we could get our pain up and out with safe people, not each other, because it's impossible. It was impossible for him to help me.
Two broken people that are empty and have nothing to give. It's not fair to think that they can be there for each other. So I like Rebecca's question. She said, was there a deciding moment that got you from despair to belief that your situation might improve? Was there a deciding moment?
I would say when we started to shift to gratitude, when we learned the tools of how to shift to gratitude. We would feel pain. We would not push the pain away. We learned this tool, from you. We would not push the pain away. We would feel that pain come up, which is hard to do. Sit with that pain, help us draw a good memory, something good. In the 26 years, we have a reservoir of beautiful memories. And then, use that, feel grateful for that memory with Garrett. It brings a smile. It eases my pain. It's a whole thing. It's a process. Gratitude is the path to peace and healing. And so the more you use a tool, the quicker you are able to learn how to use the tool. Today, it's become, for all of life, not just for dealing with the death of Garrett, an immense, it just helps us appreciate life better.
For me, when Garrett died, that was like an explosion, an atom bomb. And for me, there was no moment that I felt gratitude. It happened gradually through lots of hard work, like Tom says. That resonates with me. I believe in that. Anything that I've ever done in my life that's worth having or doing has been hard work, and this was no different. I've worked very hard at this to arrive at where I am today. So for me, there was no one moment. It was, kind of being in the trenches, digging the trench, each shovelful, and then sooner or later you start to see progress, and you build upon that. That's how it was for me. At the beginning, I was just trying to breathe. I told Kim, the physical, like I couldn't breathe. I felt like something was on my chest. If someone would have told me that, I wouldn't have believed them, that could happen, but it did. And so that's where I started, and it happened gradually for me.
Kathy asked, how did you get over the guilt of thinking you could have done more to save him? How'd you get over that guilt?
We had to poke around in all that sadness and grief and guilt and regret until we were done. And it was a long, 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 long time. When someone puts a gun to their head and doesn't want to live anymore, and it's your child or your spouse, maybe, I only have reference of a child. The child I was supposed to protect and love. There is a lot of guilt and a lot of regret and a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I was always there for Garrett until I wasn't. And then that's when he died.
For me as a father, I'm supposed to protect my children, and my child killed himself. So the guilt involved for me was one of the hardest things that I had to do on my grief journey, was to forgive myself.
We had to ask ourselves, if there was anything we could have done to save Garrett, we would have done it. We would have done it.
One thing that helped me, we did everything, and this is my truth, that we did everything that we could in our power with the knowledge that we had at the time, out of love for Garrett. I would give him my life for Garrett. Did I make mistakes? In my opinion, yes, I made mistakes. Would I do things different? Garrett killed himself. I would try something different, but that doesn't mean it would be better. As a human being, in my mind, I always think I do things different, it would have been better. My son told me, no, it could have been worse. Yes, it could have been worse. He could have killed himself, taken out a family. So that's my truth.
I believe you have to poke around in that.
And I believe
for a long time.
To forgive yourself is one of the hardest things for me that I've ever done, to forgive myself. But then again, I talked to Garrett. I asked Garrett, what do you think? And, his answer to me is he made a lot more mistakes than I did. And I believe that's true. So if you want to start pointing the fingers at people, his answer to me was he made way more mistakes than I did. I believe that's true. I made my fair share of mistakes. And for me, if I want to beat myself up on the guilt side, then I like to look at the other side too. Our other son has been clean and sober for either 8 or 9 years now. So if I'm going to beat myself up for Garrett's suicide, am I going to give myself credit because my other son's clean and sober and I'm that powerful that I made him clean and sober? No, that doesn't make sense to me, that I'm not that powerful. So then you flip that back over to Garrett's death. The mistakes that I made, I see people making way more mistakes than I made, and their child's alive. So, you know, that's what helped me through my guilt, and to be able to forgive myself, to know that I'm not powerful enough to save someone from killing themselves. I'm not powerful enough to have a person be sober. I'm not that powerful.
And neither am I. Marie, I like her question too. Did you have anger towards God for only having your son for 26 years and not longer? Did you have anger towards God?
For me, I had lots of anger. I had a ton of anger. I think Kim says it made me feel powerful, you know, that I could control that. And I believe that, looking back on it, is true. But for me, my anger was never towards God, and my anger was never towards Garrett. My anger was that my son wasn't here, but mostly my anger was towards the disease of alcoholism and addiction. That's what my anger was.
I'm thankful I didn't have anybody to blame. You know, I never really, I was angry at life maybe, but that was it, you know, angry at life for being life, for playing out the way it did. I had to mourn the person I was along with Garrett. When Garrett died, there's no going back. The chapter that somebody just read the other day about there's no going back ever to the person you were before your beloved died. Ever, ever, ever. That is so true. And I liked who I was before when Garrett was alive. I liked my life, you know? So not only was I mourning Garrett, but I was mourning myself, my person that I was. And until I laid those things down, surrender to that is no more. He's not coming back, and neither are you. I couldn't move forward.
I didn't know you before Garrett died. Do you like yourself now?
Better. I like myself better today than looking back in retrospect, yeah.
Because I like you.
I don't have a big grand purpose in life since Garrett died. I know many people are very, very driven to do unbelievably wonderful things. I've settled into a very peaceful existence, and it's very simple for me. My daily existence comes down to peace or pain every single day, and to love the people that I love well. And that's simple for me, and that's where I try to operate from, and that brings me peace, and it makes me like myself pretty well.
If every single person focused on loving people in their life as best as they could, we would transform the world.
Well, Garrett gave me that gift.
And you're giving it to us as a gift, that it's something that we might aspire to do. You're showing us what's possible. So I want to wrap up. I want to let folks know that next Tuesday, which is June 2nd, at the same time at 7:30 p.m., I am going to introduce you to one of my friends and one of Kim and Kirk's friends. And her name is Anna. And Anna has been reading Permission to Mourn. She read all 22 chapters. And starting June 1st, she's going to start reading my second book, Becoming Radiant. So next week at this time, I'm going to introduce you to Anna so you can get to know her better. And I'm going to ask her to talk about these fundamental questions. So mark that.
That'll be great. Oh, it's wonderful. I'd like to end with one quote that I also stumbled across last night, if I could. When I was I never had a Facebook before Garrett died, but it was my tool for getting my grief and mourning up and out. So it's my private journal made public. Anyway, coincidentally, I found this quote that I think is appropriate. And it said, life is so subtle sometimes that you barely notice yourself walking through the doors that you once prayed would open. And I think that sums it up for us right now. We are beyond grateful to be breathing, to be relatively happy in life, to be peaceful, to have had Garrett for 26 years. And I do believe that we have walked through the doors of peace on this journey. And we don't view it as much anymore as a grief journey as we do a life journey. This was part of our life. Garrett was a huge part of our life, always will be. The relationship continues, but we have walked through those doors of peace and we are grateful.
Would you read the quote again?
Life is so subtle sometimes that you barely notice yourself walking through the doors you once prayed would open.
Thank you, Garrett, for bringing us together.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about him and say his name so many times in this last hour and a half. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Tom, for asking us, and thank you for everything that you have done for us.
And to all the people that are watching that have been with us all these years.
My hope is that we planted seeds. My hope is that through the two of you, we've painted a picture of what might be possible for the next person. So I think you're both amazing. And I am so, so grateful that you've trusted me along this way. And I'm glad that together we can widen the circle and we can give hope and possibility to the next person.
Absolutely.
That we can maybe save one more.
Yes.
That's what we want.
Absolutely. One more.
Okay, so I want you guys to stay, but I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for watching and giving us this time.
Thank you, everybody.
If you think this is valuable and might help someone else, please share it. And next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Central, I'll see you then. Take good care. I am quite sure. Hold on.